and welcome back. My name is Jim and I have Parkinson's disease, or PD as I prefer to call it. If you haven't viewed my Part 1 and Part 2 videos yet, I encourage you to do so. I think it would provide you with some helpful background information leading up to this video. But today, I'm going to discuss some techniques that may help someone with PD regain, or at least maintain, movement functionality in their arms, hands, and fingers. This is the area of the body which is often impacted by PD.
For example, small illegible handwriting called micrographia is a very common symptom of PD, and it was one of my first symptoms. I also lost my ability to work with a keyboard and mouse on the computer. Two other examples of fine motor skills. Only my PD medications allowed me to resume those activities. Using our arms, hands, and fingers is like so many other things in life. We simply assume they will always work for us until we lose that capability. The good news is that there are some exercises involving music that may help restore, or at least preserve, our quality of movement in this area. Research in this area of using music as an aid to treating movement disorders due to injury, disease, or just how things have always been began to bear fruit in the 1990s. One of the pioneers and one of today's leading researchers and practitioners of neurologic music therapy, or NMT, is Dr. Michael Taut of the University of Toronto. Most of my limited understanding of NMT comes from Dr. Taut's work. Our first slide mentioned TIMP, T-I-M-P. Simply put, TIMP, beyond this long name, is using musical instruments of any kind, wind instruments, stringed instruments, percussion, whatever, to help people move better. In practicing TIMP, we'll also be utilizing the principles of RAS and entrainment. Some of you may recall seeing these definitions in my Part 1 video. These are the illustrations used in Part 1 to explain the concept of entrainment in everyday terms. The racing car and the booster rockets on the right represent auditory signals carrying the rhythm of the music through the central nervous system. And the street hot rod and the space shuttle represent motor signals, which are hitching a ride, so to speak, with the auditory signals, creating an alternative neural pathway for executing movement.
So what we're going to be doing today is very simple. We're going to perform a TIMP exercise aimed at longer-term improvements in our fine motor skills. That is the use of our arms, hands, and fingers. We're going to start very simply with only one drum today. The drum is one of the simplest and most available of music instruments. You have numerous potential drums where you live. It might be a pot from the kitchen, or a discarded cardboard box, or an empty paint can, or you may choose to buy a child's drum. You don't need an electronic setup like I'm going to be using. We're going to use music as a movement aid, taking advantage of RAS and entrainment to facilitate our movements. And we're also taking advantage of the plasticity of the central nervous system to reprogram it for better movement. But that doesn't occur automatically or overnight. You have to do it over and over again. As we used to say, practice, practice, practice. And you have to keep it up over the long term.
These are our goals for this series of TIMP exercises. I can see 3 or 4 that are part of today's exercise. As a side note, my experience has been that if I'm off my medication when I'm ready to do these exercises, to avoid frustration, it's better for me to wait until I'm on again, or at least partially on. So let's get started, boys and girls. And by the way, let's have fun while we're doing it.
Well, I have my drum, and I hope you have yours too, whatever it might be. An old paint can, or a pot from the kitchen, or an empty box, and your drumsticks, wooden spoons, or maybe you've even purchased a toy drum. It's very important the music we use have a steady tempo, a steady beat, and that it have a strong rhythm that we can readily hear and feel. Since we're doing such a simple exercise today, I've selected a very simple song that meets these criteria. A friend of mine introduced me to it. It's called the Pant Song. I hope you don't find it too annoying. We're going to strike our drums one beat for each beat of the music, just like this. Very simple. So here we go. Let's give this a try. There, that was easy, wasn't it? But it can be a lot of fun too. Drumming is good for a person's emotional well-being. For purposes of this video, I'm just showing you a few seconds of the exercise, but when we're performing the exercise for real, obviously we need to do them much longer. Let's pick up the pace on this next one. We're going to strike the drum twice as often. For those of you who read music, we're going to hit eighth notes instead of quarter notes, like we did in the first exercise. So instead of this, it'll be like this. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
Bunny pants, muddy pants, wear them with sunny pants. Have you seen these bunny pants? Yes, I have. Wear them when you're happy pants, little baby nappy pants, special pants for driving in the car.
All right, that was a little more fun. Now let's try something even more challenging. We're going to double the pace again on our right hand. We're going to hit 16th notes. It will go something like this. If you do this for very long, you'll start to feel it in your wrist for sure. Let's go.
Small pants, big pants, giant frilly pink pants, new pants, blue pants, 1, 2, 3. Rich pants, poor pants, swinging on the door pants. How many?
Well, did yours truly hit that perfectly? No, he didn't. He needs a lot more practice. Remember, what we're doing is reprogramming our neuroplastic central nervous system, and that doesn't happen overnight or automatically. You must practice these exercises, and you have to keep your program going over the long haul. Otherwise, you'll lose all the improvements in movement that you've worked so hard to gain. It's just like physical exercise for PD in that respect. And another hint, when you're drumming to the music, don't think too hard about what you're doing. Try to feel the rhythm and let it carry you along. It's hard sometimes to let go and trust entrainment in the rhythm to help you along. But it will help you drum to the music, and it's more fun that way. And I promise we won't use the pants song anymore. In the future, we'll just put it away. It was fun while it lasted. In his chapter on TIMP in his NMT handbook, Dr. Taut describes a number of exercises for both fine motor skills and gross motor skills that can be easily adapted to whatever kind of musical instruments you may have or what configuration you may use. In future videos, we'll build on what we've started today, increasing our drumming challenges and expanding into some of these other instruments such as the keyboard, the triangle, the foot bass drum, and the cymbal. We will enhance our multitasking skills, which are usually an area of difficulty for people with PD, by playing more than one of these instruments at the same time. Speaking of fun, believe it or not, I'm a little tired of march music right now. We'll come back to it, I'm sure, but I've really come to like Caribbean music. I love its rhythms, and I actually find it a relaxing style of music. So we're going to use it for a while, and here's a sample of what you might expect.